afternoon on this Saturday, November 8th. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. In Tripoli, police arrest a militia commander wanted for his involvement in clashes between opponents and supporter of President Bashar al-Assad. U.S.-led airstrikes hit jihadist positions in the north and eastern part of Syria, including an oil field as ISIS shell a camp for people displaced from Kobani. And the U.S. authorizes a broad expansion of the U.S. military mission in Iraq that will boost the total number of U.S. troops to 3,100. Police have arrested a militia commander wanted for his involvement in clashes between opponents and supporters of President Bashar al-Assad in Tripoli. The man, identified by his initials as AM, was detained in the Tripoli neighborhood of Talat al-Awari, and he is wanted for several arrest warrants, including for his involvement in previous rounds of clashes in the city. Several rounds of clashes have erupted in the past 3 years between pro-Assad gunmen in the Alawite neighborhood of Jabal al-Muhsin and their rivals in the Sunni-dominated neighborhood of Bayt al-Tabbani. Clashes have subsided after the army implemented a security plan to restore law and order to the rest of the city. Many militia commanders were detained as part of the crackdown, while some were released later after servicing their sentence. Negotiations with the Nusra Front have now taken a serious turn after the group handed over the list of demands, but dealing with ISIS is a much more difficult task and has not yet kicked off. These are the words of General Abbas Ibrahim. He told a local newspaper that he hoped Damascus would assist Lebanon in the case of the 27 Lebanese policemen and soldiers held by ISIS and Nusra separately, and he also noted the historic ties and continuous coordination between the Syrian and Lebanese armies. In Al Akhbar newspaper, he said the case of the soldiers' abduction is complicated and requires time and patience, but serious negotiations are about to start, especially after the kidnappers sent the list of the demands. U.S.-led airstrikes hit jihadist positions in the north and eastern part of Syria, including an oil field. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which relies on witnesses on the ground, the raids against ISIS come as the jihadists are shelling a camp for people displaced from the flashpoint Syrian town of Kobani. They killed 2 civilians, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. ISIS now controls most oil fields in Deir ez-Zor, which borders Iraq. The U.S.-led coalition, which launched strikes against jihadist positions in Syria back in September, also hit ISIS militants in Kobani. Known as Ain al-Arab in Arabic, the town on the border with Turkey has been besieged by ISIS for nearly 2 months. And Syrian Kurdish forces, backed by rebels and Iraqi Peshmerga fighters, have been battling to expel ISIS from the town, most of whose residents have fled. ISIS shelling has killed 2 and wounded 4, including a child at a camp for the people forced to flee the violence. U.S. President Barack Obama has authorized a broad expansion of the U.S. military mission in Iraq that will boost the total number of U.S. troops there to about 3,100. He's also spreading advisory teams and trainers to the north and west, where fighting with ISIS militants has been fierce. Pentagon Press Secretary Rear Admiral John Kirby said the military will set up several training sites across Iraq to instruct 12 Iraqi brigades and also establish 2 operations where small advisory teams can work with Iraqi forces at the headquarters and brigade levels.
Commander-in-Chief has authorized Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel to deploy to Iraq up to 1,500 additional U.S. personnel over the coming months in a non-combat role to expand our advise and assist mission and initiate a comprehensive training effort for Iraqi forces. Secretary Hagel made this recommendation to the President based on the request of the government of Iraq, U.S. Central Command's assessment of Iraqi units, the progress Iraqi security forces have made in the field, and in concert with the development of a coalition campaign plan to defend key areas and go on the offensive against ISIL. U.S. Central Command will establish 2 expeditionary advise and assist operation centers in locations outside of Baghdad and Erbil to provide support for the Iraqis at the brigade headquarters level and above. These centers will be supported by an appropriate array of force protection capabilities. U.S. Central Command will establish several sites across Iraq that will accommodate the training of 12 Iraqi brigades, specifically 9 Iraqi Army and 3 Peshmerga brigades. These sites will be located in northern, western, and southern Iraq. Coalition partners will join U.S. personnel at these locations to help build Iraqi capacity and capability. The training will be funded through the request for an Iraqi Train and Equip Fund that the administration will submit to Congress, as well as from the government of Iraq. We're going in at the request of the Iraqi government. We're wanted there. We weren't wanted to stay there after 2011. Number 2, there's a very acute threat that's facing the Iraqi people, the Iraqi government, and the Iraqi security forces, a threat that they are trying to grapple with right now, and they have acknowledged that they need a little bit of help in that regard. So it's a completely different situation, and we're confident that if we get the funding that we're requesting from Congress, that we'll be able to make significant progress in this regard. The other thing I'd add is one of the reasons why we think this is a good idea right now is because the Iraqi security forces have stiffened their spine and have gone on the offense and have shown that they've got good capabilities. But there's gaps. There's gaps in some of those capabilities, some of the enabling functions that they need a little help with and advice. And again, that's what we're going to provide.
Coming up next, some Special Operations Service members are unhappy that one of their own has taken credit for killing Osama bin Laden publicly. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news here on Future Television. The European Union's new Foreign Affairs Chief, Federica Mogherini, appealed for the establishment of a Palestinian state, saying the world cannot afford another war in Gaza. We need a Palestinian state, she said. That is the ultimate goal, and this is the position of all the European Union. She was on a trip to Gaza, and she can see it was devastated by its third conflict in 6 years. Hamas and Israel fought a 50-day war in July and August, which resulted in the death of 2,140 Palestinians and more than 70 Israelis. Mogherini's visit comes against a backdrop of surging Israeli-Palestinian tensions in annexed East Jerusalem, where there have been near-daily clashes in flashpoint neighborhoods. She voiced hope that Gaza would avoid another major conflict, but asked whether the EU might do the same. Mogherini said that such a move was not among the competences of the 28-nation bloc. Story making headlines around the world. In Mexico, suspected gang members have confessed to killing more than 40 missing students and burning their remains, according to Mexico's chief prosecutor. 3 Guerreros Unidos gang members confessed to killing the male students after police handed them over between Iguala and the neighboring town of Cocula. Attorney General Jesus Murillo Caram said on Friday, showing videos of the taped confessions. The bodies were set on fire down a hill from a Cocula garbage dump with gasoline, tires, firewood, and plastic in a 14-hour-long inferno. He said authorities would continue to consider the students as missing until DNA tests confirm the identities. But he also added that there was a lot of evidence that could indicate it was them. If the confessions are proven true, the mass murder would rank among the worst massacres in a drug war that has killed more than 80,000 people and left 22,000 others missing since 2006. Some Special Operations Service members and veterans are unhappy that one of their own has taken credit publicly for killing Osama bin Laden. Others say they have gotten used to the idea that their brethren might break the code of silence and seek to profit from their deeds. That internal debate gained intensity this week when retired Navy SEAL Robert O'Neill acknowledged that he had fired 2 rounds into the forehead of the Al-Qaeda leader during the 2011 raid on his secret compound in Pakistan. We're talking, of course, of Osama bin Laden. O'Neill says more and more people were becoming aware of his role and that his name was bound to become public anyway. He had recounted his version of the bin Laden raid in February of 2013 to Esquire magazine, which identified him only as the shooter. There's an expectation inside that community, a code that they ascribe to, that they will not seek recognition for what they do and that they will not seek financial gain from what they do, according to Pentagon spokesman Admiral John Kirby. He says that O'Neill holds a lot of engagements. That's where he makes the majority of his money in speaking engagement, and quite frankly, he doesn't know if he'd go to one of them because now everybody's going to be sitting in a room with a guy that's got a huge bullseye on him. Sounding upbeat and conciliatory is U.S. President Barack Obama. Well, he met face-to-face with congressional leaders for the first time since a Republican electoral takeover of the Senate upended the political landscape in Washington. He pledged to work on ending long-running partisan gridlock and to be open to Republican ideas, even as differences remain stark. Though deep-seated differences on a number of issues do not seem to have abated with the election, Obama sounded positive, and he thanked Republican leaders for their graciousness in joining him for a lunch at the White House.
As I said the other night, obviously Republicans had a good night, and I've congratulated both Mitch McConnell as well as Speaker Boehner for running very strong campaigns. The American people just want to see work done here in Washington. I think they're frustrated by the gridlock. They'd like to see more cooperation, and I think all of us have the responsibility, me in particular, to try to make that happen. I am not going to judge ideas based on whether they're Democratic or Republican. I'm going to be judging them based on whether or not they work. I'm confident that they want to produce results as well on behalf of the American people. So I appreciate their graciousness in coming here, and I'm very much looking forward to giving them some updates on progress we've been making on issues like Ebola and ISIL. There's going to be some specific work that has to get done during the next several weeks before the new Congress commences, and my hope is that even as we enter into a new Congress, the previous Congress has the opportunity still to make progress on a whole bunch of fronts, and I'm confident we can get that done. So thank you again.
British Prime Minister David Cameron attended a charity event in London organized by Commando 999 at the Military Wives Choir a day before Remembrance Sunday. Commando 999 represents a community raising money for Royal Marines and their families in need. The Military Wives Choir, a charity bringing women in the military closer together through singing, performed First World War songs during the event. Remembrance Day marks the anniversary of the end of World War I on November 11th, 1918. And the world's most celebrated Christmas tree is already on display at New York's Rockefeller Center after traveling from Pennsylvania and being lifted into place by a crane. The 26-meter Norway spruce that belonged to a central Pennsylvania family of Christmas elves was delivered to serve as Rockefeller Center's Christmas tree this year. The tree was donated by Dan Sigafus and Rachel Drozdek Sigafus, who live in a century-old farmhouse about 3 hours west of New York City. It was discovered by Rockefeller Center's head gardener, Eric Paws. Workers cut down the 13-ton tree, and a crane hoisted onto a trailer on Wednesday morning for the 250-kilometer journey to Midtown Manhattan. It will be illuminated for the first time on December 3rd in a ceremony that's been held since 1933. The annual tree lighting event at Rockefeller Center attracts tens of thousands of people and is watched by millions or more on television. After Christmas, the tree will return to Pennsylvania, and its wood will be used to build homes for Habitat for Humanity, according to the donators. This wraps up today's newscast. Let me remind you of our headlines. In Tripoli, police arrest a militia commander wanted for his involvement in clashes between opponents and supporters of President Bashar al-Assad. U.S.-led airstrikes hit jihadist position in the north and eastern of Syria, including an oil field, as ISIS shell a camp for people displaced from the Kobani. And the U.S. authorizes a broad expansion of the U.S. military mission in Iraq that will boost the total number of U.S. troops there to about 3,100. This wraps up your bulletin here for this Saturday. I'm Yumna Naufal signing off. Have a good weekend.